today. We are a smaller group today, but people still keep coming. How are you? Put a smiley face or a check mark if you are doing well. Thank you. I can see check marks and smiley faces coming up. You can see a small icon just below the panel of the names, and that's one of the ways how we can communicate throughout. The other option is that you just put any note in the chat box. Feel free to do that at any time throughout our session. We have 1 hour session today, which will be devoted to ecology coaching, and we are ready to start. I am still a little bit waiting because now there is big influx of new people coming, which is great. So let me see. I will kindly ask my lovely teacher assistant Maria to put people who are entering on mute, which is great, such that we have clear lines here. And let's get started. Let's dive in. So one more thing. Let's start recording, Maria. Yes, thank you. So here we are again, a session that is devoted to the Eco Coaching series at Erickson Coaching International. And our theme today is the interconnectedness between the ecosystems of a human body and the earth. And I'm Rosa Tkacova. I am a medical doctor, coach, and facilitator of a health coach training program at Erickson. And during my entire practice as a medical doctor at the university setting, both in Canada and in Slovakia, my main focus was respiratory medicine, lung disorders, and their link to nutrition, obesity, or cachexia. Cachexia is extreme undernutrition. And I was always curious, what is the link between human behavior, individuals' behavior, and their health? And this question became even more actual and relevant in current times when the call to protect the environment is very high. Now it is about sustainment of the living ecosystem on the planet Earth, and that includes us all as individuals, and it includes us all as the humanity. Hence my interest and kind of call in a task, a mission to be here with you and to take this further in my professional coaching and training practice, ecology coaching, and looking at the systems of human body and the earth, how they are connected, how can we support each of them, and by supporting each of them, bringing and sustaining life and health on our planet. So welcome. My very warm welcome to all of you who are here today with me to share thoughts, information, and insight. There will be plenty of room for discussion today. So what is the impact of climate change on human health, of global warming? This is happening. It is here. And we are aware of climate change over many years now. The process is accelerating. And as it does accelerate, we are becoming more and more aware that an action needs to be taken. And this is also because the conditions, these orders that are linked to climate change and global warming are on rise. So I'll very briefly mention which they are. I'll use a laser pointer here just to be more specific. So air pollution related to asthma, cardiovascular disease. Now we are coming to the ecology change in vector ecology. Vectors, those are insects that transmit disorders. So an entire range of infectious diseases that are transmitted to humans is on the rise because there is change in the environment for insects, increasing allergens, their content in the air, respiratory allergies, asthma, other allergies, water quality impact, again, many infectious disorders, primary cholera and others. There are challenges with supply of water and food, and that leads to malnutrition and increased incidence of diarrhea, increased presence of diarrhea in communities. Environmental degradation that urges people to migrate for food, for sources of food and clean water. Civil conflict and mental health impact that is linked to that. Extreme heat, and we have experienced that all around the globe more and more in the past about couple of years. There are heat-related illnesses and deaths, and they are being reported during the summertime all over the world. Primary cardiovascular failure, and then severe weather and the immediate acute impact that all the calamities bring to the humankind and communities, and those have also mental health impact. So we are in this all, and we are aware of that, and the time is to act. Now, when we talk about the ecosystem, let's keep in mind what we have in mind, and that is that ecosystem is defined as any system or network of parts that are interconnected, interlinked, and they do interact. So they are present there and also interact. So mountains and a mountain range, they are a system of mountains. They don't interact. However, animals, human beings interact. And now when you look and when you think about human body, what are the parts of this system of human body that do interact, and how do they interact? In other words, the question is, and I'm inviting you to share as a post in a chat, what does this term, the ecosystem of human body, mean to you? Please post in the chat. Well, what comes to mind? Or raise your hand and share with us. Physical and mental health affecting each other. Wholeness. All that is true. And at the very basic material level, those are human cells, biological substances, molecules. We talk about brain chemicals and other chemicals. We all, when we see our GP, general practitioner, our doctor, we know that they take blood and urine and measure all the range of various chemicals in those fluids. Yeah, so it is interconnectedness of biological systems within the body, as well as our connectedness with the environment. Very much so. Thank you, Emily, and everyone who participated in the chat. So when we look just at the human body, those are cells, all the molecules that circulate in our bloodstream and other fluids, and they communicate. They communicate also by electrical signals like nerve cells. And the main term here is balance, keeping the balance. This entire system in our body is being kept in balance by very sophisticated mechanisms. And there is one additional large system that is present in our body, and we discovered its significance and importance for us only very recently in the last 10 years, and we call it the microbiome. Our bodies, in our guts, gastrointestinal system, the mouth, and in the lungs and on the skin, has so many microbial cells that actually the number of microbial cells exceeds the number of our own cells. So this is a powerful as if organ or system that is within our body, and it plays a major regulatory. It interacts with us, and it also interacts with our metabolism. To put it very simply, whether a child will have a higher risk of obesity in the adulthood is linked to the child's microbiome, whether it was born naturally or via C-section. Naturally, microbiome is healthier. Whether the child is being put on antibiotics 5 times a year or not, antibiotics are detrimental to the healthy natural microbiome. We need to take them often or rarely, it depends. So when they are indicated, that's very good to take them. However, overuse of antibiotics leads to microbiome that doesn't serve the body, our human cells that well. So here's another question. How does your inner physical ecosystem, and here I use the term physical, meaning human cells, biological substances, fluids, as we look at our body, how does this system interact with the external world, primarily every day, every minute? How does it interact? Please share in the chat again. And we have it here. We need air for breathing. Thank you, Claudia. Breathing is number 1. 16 times on average. Every minute we take a breath in and we breathe out. So there's an exchange of air, oxygen and carbon dioxide. That's number 1. Number 2 is food. Waste that we produce. CO2 is in a way waste, and there is other ways that we produce. And also we interact by physical activities, by movement, and we interact through all our senses. We do, and through all our bodily functions, we do interact. And the main 3 really that are interaction between me and what's out there is air, food, exercise. Thank you. And it all has an impact on the entire system, including the microbiome. So the question is, what are our everyday choices to keep balance in the system? Here, when we look at these 3 components, our choices every day regarding how we breathe and what we breathe in and breathe out are as they are. We are more dependent on what's in the air than being able to change that immediately. Of course, we as humanity, we are the system that changes the air quality. On the individual level, our major impact is in terms of our interaction in terms of food and our interaction in terms of our physical activities. And that is linked to air quality and food quality and so on. Of course, the interactions are very complex there. So let me just dive into our food choices that are listed as healthy by international medical authorities and regulatory bodies. Food choices that are healthy for individual health. And here I highlighted in the upper panel Canada's food guide, simply since I am here in Canada and I follow that very closely. Food guide is being issued by Government Canada for decades, maybe 40 years. And it has been updated last year really to indicate that preference of plant-based food is the way to go to sustain individual health. The same is being the case in the USA. And now going back to, I'll clear my point there, going back to medical societies, international ones that really regulate and navigate best choices. It is the Society for Hypertension that says preference of plant-based food. American Cancer Society, guidelines on nutrition and physical activity for cancer prevention, the same statement. European Respiratory Society recommendations for respiratory health. I'm a part of a committee there for healthy nutrition in people with COPD, with smoking-related disorders. So there is a committee for healthy nutrition. We stay the same. The same is being the case for cardiovascular diseases, diabetes, and others. So this is the reflection of current times. This is where we are in terms of recommending people what is healthy. I will dive more into that. Why is that so soon? This applies to current production of food. And current production of food is industrial. Industrial production of food has impact on the quality of food and quality of the land. So this is where we are now. And just yesterday, I came across a very interesting article published last month in Journal of the American Medical Association journal. And this thorough analysis is an analysis of all-cause mortality, meaning just how people die and how many of them die through a given period of time, and the risk of all-cause mortality and servings per day of processed meat. That's this first graph, and just it's a complex illustration and complex statistics. Just look at this line here. So with increased proportions of servings per day, there's increased hazard ratio of leaving this planet. And this second panel on the right, that's unprocessed red meat. And again, it's a little bit flatter. However, there is an increase in overall cause mortality with risk with increased intake of unprocessed red meat. That's the reality. In other words, the preference of animal-based food leads what I have just shown to you. And the emphasis is on the preference of plant-based food. And there are thousands of articles, scientific medical articles published that connect the preference of plant-based food with physical and mental health. So you may ask, and you will ask, how much of animal-based food and sources is useful? And I will use the metaphor that Marion has used in our first ecology coaching session here. Just enough, whatever that means to you, that you just have just enough culturally based, societally based, family based, and your internal personal preferences based. Just enough, not more. The very latest ranking of healthy diets ranked, I will just list it. So among the 4 best diets overall, it is the Mediterranean, then a specific diet designed for people with cardiovascular risk. It is called DASH diet. Then flexitarian. Flexitarian really reflects this one. Just, yeah, you eat meat just enough for you to be satisfied. And then number 4 is vegetarian diet. So that's the latest overall ranking by health authorities. So now we were looking at the ecosystem of human body as such and its exchange of food, and we spoke less about transportation. We'll be talking more about that soon, with the environment. And let's now have a look at the ecosystem of the earth as such, and what is the link here between what is good for people, for individuals, and what is beneficiary, healthy for the ecosystem of the planet? That's a question that we are asking here. Here is a graph, an illustration diagram illustrating what is the carbon footprint of food today, the way we produce food. So as of today, the largest production of CO2 carbon footprint is by meat. And then it's by dairy products, it's less by poultry, fish, seafood, and eggs. And other plant-based food is somewhere here. So there is an impact here, of course. However, it is proportional-wise smaller. And the same would hold true in terms of land use and water use. And again, I emphasize that this holds true when we talk about industrial food production. And with Christopher's agreement, I'm using his slide here because the interlink between the interconnectedness between the human body ecosystem and the planetary ecosystem and the ecosystem of all the living creatures on our planet is very complex. There's movement of minerals and nutrients between our systems. It affects all forms of human life, and we derive from the ecosystem of the environment, including plants, including all the organic matter that is in the soil, and all the in-between hosts, which already I have mentioned some of those, like insects, and also animals. We could dive in now into discussing COVID and the environment, and we may postpone that for the discussion afterwards. However, thinking about how COVID emerged and how it is linked to this interconnectedness between us human beings and the ecosystem of planet Earth, that's a part of the story that we are telling here. Because the story is that we are one ecosystem, as Christopher has pointed to already before. So let's ask here another question. Knowing that we are one ecosystem, what is ecological nutrition? Nutrition that would be beneficial for the human body and the earth at the same time. We have already mentioned quite in depth what is healthy for us from the point of view of us as human beings. Now, what is healthy from the point of view of planet Earth and living systems of planet Earth? Now, looking into that from really a scientific perspective. And this is a big topic. I can tell you that much now. Journals like Nature and Lancet for environmental scientists, medical doctors, health scientists all over the world. This is like Olympic Games for athletes. What's published there that is evidence-based and navigating us through seeing the entire map. So the questions we are asking is, what are the options for keeping the food systems within environmental limits? And there's a special commission within Lancet that is focused on finding food choices in the Anthropocene times, which are current times when our humanity and humankind presence on planet Earth determines primarily where we are heading to. The question is, what are healthy diets from sustainable food systems? And the good news, the way you look at that, is that as we are interlinked, what is good for individual health is good also for the health of the environment, and vice versa. What's detrimental for our human health at present is also detrimental for the environmental health. So there's almost a linear relationship here. I hope you can see it. Here on the x-axis, there is relative risk of mortality. And here on the y-axis, it's the average relative environmental impact, which means it's the impact that encompasses both CO2, carbon footprint, and also water use and land use. So the risk is the lowest here for us as humans, and it is the lowest here for planet as well. And it's the highest here, and it's the highest here for the planet as well. So in other words, here is the preference of plant-based food, which we have examined already. And now the new kind of imperative that I'm emphasizing here, that with this choice, we also protect the environment of the planet. Here is the new kind of link or information that I'm emphasizing here. I will ask someone who is not on mute to put themselves on mute. Thank you. And I'm coming back here to the thought that I already mentioned before. This holds true when we consider current agriculture, which is industrial agriculture, which doesn't especially meat production, which doesn't serve, I said that already, I will use positive language. What we need to do is a shift from industrial agriculture to what we call agroecology or ecological agriculture. And when we do so, this entire relationship may shift, may be very different. And you will hear stories and comments from, it would be my grandparents, they are not around anymore, who would be saying, well, at our times, it was considered to be healthy to eat meat. And in those times, it was healthy. The environment was different. And people, my grandparents, ate meat once a week. And it was considered to be a luxury. We live in different times today. The availability is generally higher. And the production has changed and the environment has changed. So again, a shift in the way we produce food, that is a call to be changed. We need to change, create a shift in food production. So as we think about the ecological nutrition and sustainable diets, that's a new term here, sustainable diet, sustainable eating pattern is such that it sustains individuals and the environment. What we can expect will happen is transformation of consumption and also transformation of food system, transformation towards ecological agriculture. That's the way to go. I can see the question there, what is SSB in the previous slide? We'll come to that. I'll ask kindly Maria that you make a note of that. I would have to go back in that slide. We will address that in the discussion. Thank you for asking that question. Thank you. So this is an imperative to change how we produce food. And for the time being, with the predominance of industrial food production, to focus on what's healthy, meaning plant-based diet. And here is the Lancet countdown on health and climate change, calling and ensuring that the health of a child born today is not defined by a changing climate. And that's a big call for all of us who live here today, because it is us today who determine life and health of children who sit in the future. That's a big call. And within this countdown on health and climate change, there is an entire large chapter devoted to nutrition and sustainable diets. And let me move the topic within this entire frame towards transportation. I want to touch upon that at least lightly. As we started to speak about sustainable diet and nutrition, we started to talk also about active transportation and sustainable transportation, which is meant to be transportation that sustains our health and environmental health. And here, there's a new journal devoted to sustainable transportation, and there's an emphasis on active forms of travel. And one of the good things in this all misery of COVID, and it's a misery, however, one of the good things is that we all discover active forms of travel and transportation also by being in a lockdown and having less access to places where we used to go. Let's say here, where I live, we cannot park on the streets in tourist areas at all where we used to go, so we just have to walk there. So what are the solutions? Let's move forward towards the solutions, knowing and understanding and being appreciative of the fact that planet Earth and us as individuals and us as humanity is one ecosystem. Here I will reflect on Peter's thoughts from the last Monday's session and the emphasis that we as humanity, we better reach agreements on what the problems are and what the solutions are and how we implement solutions. And the question is, how far are we in terms of understanding what are the problems with nutrition and transportation and what are the solutions? And you may think that we are very close to know what the problems are and what the solutions are. Don't you think so? Post in the chat if you think, based on what I mentioned today, that we have named problems well and we alluded to the solutions, at least in some ways. Please share in the chat. Did we define problems and solutions at least on a scale 1 to 10, above 5, being clear on problems and solutions? Yes, if you think we are above 5. Yes, challenge lies with implementation. Yes, I think our problems and solutions are well defined. Implementation, behavior change is the tough part. 2 imperatives here. Thank you, Bronwyn. Thank you, Emily, for this share. Yes, it sounds like we did define problems and solutions, and we face challenges with implementation. And I will even challenge that we have defined problems and solutions well soon. Before I do so, let's discuss here a little bit what the United Nations and Climate Action Group define as problems and solutions. So, solutions within energy, resources, their access and use and choices that addresses the transportation choices, food, ecological food choices, reduction of food waste, land use, and population growth, women and girls, simply keeping our population in terms of size ecologically balanced with the ecology of the planet. And education of girls and women is a task that will assist this shift. So this is how it is defined by United Nations, and it overlaps very well to the solutions that we have just mentioned: sustainable transportation, ecological nutrition, and also reproductive behavior, which is a big task, which we didn't address today. That would be a different session, which we might have some time. So we seem to have defined that well. And did we? We may have agreements on problems and solutions. How do we agree on implementation? And what is that challenge? Now, we humans we believe we are smart and wise and insightful, and when we have solutions, we just do them, and we have all the technology and all the interconnectedness now in terms of media and the knowledge. The information is so available to us all, to every child on this planet. So it's a challenge. There is a challenge indeed. There is a challenge. And I really started to think about that, and Peter had inspired me to think about that just 4 days ago on Monday. So in which levels are current solutions positioned? That's a question that I'm asking you now as we sit here. When we talk about food choices, when we talk about transportation choices, active transportation, when we choose our sexual behavior, our reproductive behavior, where are they in terms of environment action capabilities? Evelina says values. And I'll say that I've heard before that we need to change behavior. And so who else would want to share? Where do you see current solution to be positioned? Thank you, Evelina, for sharing. Well, it's behavior. It's behavior. It is what we do. I can say, at least from my perspective, and feel free to disagree if you wish so, when I, as a doctor, tell my patients, change what you put on your plate, I basically navigate them through their actions. I may navigate them through what they do and when and where they do. And I may advise them, as a doctor, I can do that, not as a coach, as a doctor, I can do that. I may advise them to train themselves to increase their skills in terms of, let's say, preparing healthy nutrition for them and their family members. The same would hold true for transportation and for reproductive behavior. And this is what doctors do. We advise in terms of actions and behavior in these logical levels. That's what we do. And it's a close question, how big is the shift that we create by giving advice? You know it well. We do. However, the range and the amount, the scale could be bigger. It is being said that the doctor's advice is being followed by 15 to 20% of people. And the main reason is that the inspiration, the values, and the identity are not being involved in the conversation. And Garrett, we will discuss that soon in an open discussion in the entire group. Just keep your thoughts and keep writing in the chat room. Very much so. New focus can benefit enormously from identity. Thank you, Brahmin. That's exactly what our task may be here. And let me share with you this quote here, this quote by Albert Einstein. A human being is a part of the whole called by us universe, a part limited in time and space. Our task must be to free ourselves by widening our circle of compassion to embrace all living creatures in the whole of nature and its beauty. So as we think about this really enlightened thought and a quote by Albert Einstein, what struck me, and I believe struck all of us, is that he already many years ago, 50 years ago, would define this as a task for all of ourselves as humanity, that we shift to something that we call values and that we perceive us all as one. He talks about the wholeness, and everyone says, oh, I understand now, let's keep going here. Let's keep gaining insight and think thoroughly that's true. So Einstein shifted thinking towards values, towards being, towards appreciating us all as a whole so many years ago, and the goal is now to move in that direction. So where does the transformation happen? Aisha, thank you. Identity level, vision, and purpose. That is where the transformation occurs. The question is, how may we create a shift? Finding solution in and from higher logical levels. How may we, coaches, assist crossing this bridge from the lower logical levels to the upper logical levels to acting then on the everyday basis from the perspective of wholeness and from the perspective of the deepest core values of life and health? That's a question. And to me, it is our task. And I hope it's not only our task, however, speaking for myself, I certainly did take that upon myself as a task to bring and use and promote solution-focused ecology coaching as a way to cross the bridge and to transform. And from my perspective, the way I perceive solution-focused ecology coaching could be perceived as binding the I perspective, as the we humankind, and we humans and the planet Earth perspective. And then from this perspective, to create a shift in terms of our behavior. That might be and seems to be the link, the missing link so far, that we as a humanity need to now, as we name it, just to bring it to life, make it happen. And I just came across this book quite recently, a book to which Miriam Atkinson wrote a foreword by Richard Boyle. The last unpolluted place on earth is inside ourselves. It's a very powerful, insightful book. And I'm bringing a quote from Richard Boyle here to you. The transformation work needs to be available to as many people as possible. It is a human race issue. And Richard Boyle also argues at large that it is the transformation which is the imperative. It is the transformation that will assist implementation of all the well-meant advice and action steps at the level of behavior. The transformation needs to happen for the implementation to become a reality. And with that, I'm opening our discussion here. And everyone is invited to raise their hand and think thoroughly. I may just post all the questions here altogether, because I do believe now at this point that you may feel prompted to address any of these three questions. So let's think, which action steps may you consider for yourself towards ecological nutrition, transportation? What and whom can you impact in your personal life? What and whom can you impact as a coach and as a leader? And there was a question here for Garrett, and I'll invite Garrett now. I'm grateful to hear questions. Just go off mute and you can share with us, just read the question and the thought behind that. Garrett, are you willing to go off mute? Maria, you may help in the background. We may unmute everyone. We may allow people. Yeah, Garrett is being locked out. Maria, please, for the discussion, it might be very useful now. I may do that. I will unmute. Let me ask you now. Well, let's give it a try. You may all put your on mute now. Let's give it a try. It might be worthwhile, and we do have 18 more minutes. Oh, sorry. Yeah. So we have some time here, 13 more minutes. Okay, guys, what is you willing to share with us now? What are your thoughts here?
I think with my background, I mean, I don't necessarily think we've defined the problems and solutions well. I think we've defined them from a Western perspective.
Okay.
And I think we're looking at global solutions. We're looking for technology. We're looking for all these things. And I go back to that thought of Einstein that, you know, we can't solve the problems with the same thinking that created them. To a more that for me in the research I've done, I've seen that sustainability and those kind of things is really regionally community defined. And how can we as a collective empower, and especially right now because the effects of climate change are, they will affect us all, but right now they are disproportionately affecting poor and marginalized communities. So how do we empower them to make the changes they need, and at the same time we become a part of that collective mind, right? Like, I'm not saying that they have the answers. They have the answers for themselves, and we certainly need to take steps of our own to solve our impacts that are not affecting us directly, right? So it's this really tricky, complex soup. and you know, that last comment I made, we're also fighting against the individual. I mean, these questions, I've tried to do all these things. I try to impact my family. I try to do these things. And you're fighting against that. You're fighting against convenience, and you're fighting against the supremacy of the individual, that what is good for me is paramount.
I couldn't agree more with you, Garrett. And as we have been through also individual choices, and we were looking from the planet Earth perspective, the community and society perspective was embedded in between. And the shift here, I would highlight the need of a shift towards ecological food production in communities, and that is relevant to all communities and all around the world. And the shift will, it is us within the communities who may be driving the shift. And as leaders here, it is here on this slide, how and whom can we impact as a coach or as a leader? And that's a question that each of us is asking ourselves. And yes, we may be, for a moment, negative language here, trapped in thinking that our power and our reach is somewhere, and what is beyond where it seems to end. And I'll bring another thought here, saw that a minimal change somewhere, the butterfly wings effect, minimal change in human behavior somewhere may have profound impact in what is happening somewhere else. And as individuals, what we do, if we do it right, it's impactful. What we do as coaches, it's being impactful. And yes, it's an open-ended question, guys. I couldn't agree more. How can we engage local communities all around the world in the more industrially developed countries and in less industrially developed countries towards ecological food production and ecological transportation, towards sustainability? So
yeah, and I agree. I think if we were to focus, I think the problem exists is that everyone's looking for the silver bullet of this global solution, and it's not. It's in our backyards, right? And if we look to focusing, supporting local food, local businesses, connecting with your local community, getting involved and connected that way, and if everyone were to start doing that, but I think this necessitates kind of a new paradigm of how we interact in our economies, and I still think all the solutions are coming around how do we fit our current model into this new kind of world or this new transition, and I don't see those two meshing together. The one is just so broken that it doesn't work for what we need to provide the solutions and move forward, in my opinion.
Thank you. I'm just writing down here some of your preferences of local food. What else would you state here?
I think that connecting to local communities, right? I mean,
okay.
The strength of, I think that breaks down a lot of the things we're dealing with around mental health, and we're human, and we crave social connection, and the way we get that when we're this fractured world is unhealthy, as opposed to just slowing down, connecting with human beings like our neighbors and those kind of things, and really seeing what kind of power and potential we have right around us. Share to look for solutions locally, and yeah.
And look for local solutions. Thank you so much. And as this happens, as we see this unfolding, I will ask Aisha, what did you mean, if I may kindly ask you to go off mute if you wish?
Well, I just
unfolding. You were mentioning something very powerful in the chat. Please go ahead.
Yes. Well, I just when we were all talking about all these, I went back to old days, really, when we were just growing rose in our backyard and kind of producing our own rose water and making sorbet out of that, just enjoying our time in fully organic food that, come from our garden. So, I mean, this is just a small example. What I'm trying to say is that as human beings, we need to put more sweat on producing something rather than just going to the shelves and consume the things that are already processed.
Thank you, Aisha. And Terry says, this is so true that we need to seek a rebalancing of resources, jobs, available time, income, so that we can look at the world differently, giving priorities to things of value, like locally sourced food. Thank you for sharing that. If I may ask, what and whom can you impact in your personal life? And here we had the answer about the communities, and that was very powerful. And now, as a coach and as a leader, when you think about it and take these questions home with you, what can you do on your individual level and as someone who is powerful within your societal system, within your community? Bronwyn, would you be willing to share your thought here that you were posting?
Yes, good morning, Rosa.
Hi.
One of the things that I found particularly powerful when I'm with leadership groups or just, a small group of leaders is to ask them this question. What is the one thing that they absolutely rely on every single day without which they couldn't function? And the answers are normally my cell phone, my coffee, whatever the case might be. And then, of course, I give them the answer that it's really their brains, because so much of what we do is the knowledge economy. And I ask them the question, what percentage of their day do they devote to taking care of their brain, the one thing that they need? And it's interesting because you normally just see this kind of aha in the room, that they don't consciously actually wake up in the morning saying, what food am I eating? How much sleep have I had? How am I actually interacting with my environment? What air am I breathing? What exercise, both cognitive and physical? And then more importantly, what about socialization? I think that we have often also tried to direct a lot of these awarenesses and health at the individual when it takes a village. And we're seeing a lot of studies that when somebody, for example, after a heart attack or stroke, has a coach, somebody alongside them to care for them, hold them accountable, that the recovery is much greater. So I just really think it's around this village concept and understanding that the brain itself is an interconnected system, and it teaches us so much. So if we access it, treat it correctly, it'll actually help us solve these other problems. I don't know if I'm making it too simple, but I truly believe that.
Thank you so much. This is very impactful and very insightful. And Esther just shared as a reflection and resonation of your thoughts from me. It takes a village to raise a child. It takes a humanity to raise the generation of children now that will have a chance for a healthy life. It takes
absolutely
a task for our generation. And this brings me to think about spiral dynamics. And there was a share there in the chat. I think it was Aisha. Would you be willing to share your thoughts on where we go as humanity now from the perspective of the topics that we are discussing here? You can go off mute, Aisha.
Well, do you mean the spiral dynamics?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, so just we are as coaches aware of the spiral dynamics, and the top layer, which is turquoise, and which emphasizes holistic and collective individualism and cosmic spirituality and everything being interrelated and everything affecting each other. So it's mainly ecologically conscious collective individualism. I just want to reword it that way.
Ecologically, could you repeat that for me?
Ecologically conscious collective individualism. I would like to rename it like that, because I mean, this connection, this collectivism is not possible without being ecologically conscious.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. This really resonates with all of us. And in the last minute that we have here together, that I appreciate, I just want to say that I really appreciated the time and all the thoughts and shares and insights that we just shared together. And Rupali saw this. I think it is important for us to go to basics in terms of connection and in terms of choices that we make. If there was one word of value that you really gained today in this conversation, what would that be? How would you name it, what you just received in this conversation? You may post in the chat. I saw someone saying insight, urgency, to act, hope, inspirational, awareness, heart-centered role model. Thank you all. It was inspirational for me just to prepare this and share it with you. I'm really glad to hear that you derived value from this 1-hour session today. And I'm wishing you all that on the path towards ecologically sustainable individual and societal communal behavior, you are joyful and healthy, and on this path we also protect our environment and our planet Earth. Thanks a lot, Claudia, for sharing your thanks, and thank you all for being here. Thank you, Emily. Thank you, Aisha. Thank you. I declare the session to be closed now. If anyone has any questions, feel free to stay here and ask me, or just share on the Erickson Facebook webpage. I am there regularly and I can share that with you. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you.